If you are speaking, you are on mute, Micah. Tisha.
No, ma'am. Mehdi, is everyone in? Should we begin?
Yes, we can begin.
Okay, sure. Global Entrepreneurship Summit, about to give an awe-inspiring talk. My next stop, United Nations Global Conference. Hashtag living the dream. Hashtag winning. Hashtag doing absolutely great.
Our lives are amazing. We wake up at 5 a.m. every day with a big smile on our face, and that without an alarm clock. And you know why? Because our passion wakes us. You see, after an hour of power yoga, we visualize our goals before we jumped onto a podcast or an interview.
And you see, success is our first, last, and middle name. And yes, you've guessed it. We are entrepreneurs and we are living the dream.
It's funny because it almost sounds true and it makes you wonder who these people are. Well, that's us. At least that's what you think if you just knew of us as the founder and CEOs of these multi-billion-dollar companies that we once began. You see, even when something doesn't go according to plan, we put on a brave face and behave like we are successful, even if we at some point have no idea what we're doing.
Isn't that what most of you perceive us as? Most of the time, we do face problems, we do face challenges, but that's where an entrepreneur sets himself apart from the rest. An entrepreneur encounters these challenges, faces them, and overcomes them. And it takes ideation, innovation, and skill building. And skill building not just once, but time and time again. Remember, what the world is today is not what the world will be tomorrow. New businesses, young emerging entrepreneurs, new innovations. The world is moving at a pace faster than ever before.
Now, presenting to you the theme of the Jai Hind College Global Entrepreneurship Summit 2022, the power of I. Innovation, ideation, and investment.
At the Jai Hind College Global Entrepreneurship Summit, we aim to transform lives through knowledge, collaboration, hands-on learning, industry experience, and by providing an environment that fosters entrepreneurship and innovation.
This year, the Entrepreneurship Cell and Skill Hub are under the Institution Innovation Council, and we have hosted various workshops and masterclasses throughout the year on relevant topics like cryptocurrency, design thinking, branding, networking, gaming and finance, and many more.
We also hosted a week-long initiative, Innovate, which aimed at connecting people and ideas globally. And here we are today on the 25th of February at the start of the Global Entrepreneurship Summit.
I would now like to invite the Student Secretary of the Entrepreneurship Cell and Skill Hub of Jai Hind College, Ashna Malhotra, to declare the summit open.
Thank you so much, Tanzila. and a very warm welcome to one and all present here. As Tisha rightly mentioned, that we at E-Summit Skill Hub aim to promote the most groundbreaking and relevant skills to nurture the right talents. But while nurturing these talents, it's also important to have the right attitude. We develop these talents to gain excellence in life, but excellence is not only about talents, it is about what you do with the talent. And what you do with your talent is guided by the right attitude. So with the hope of nurturing the right attitude while developing these talents, I, Ashna Malhotra, the Student Secretary of the E-Summit Skill Hub of Jai Hind College, declare the Global Entrepreneurship Summit of 2022 open. We will now have the virtual lighting of the lamp.
If there is a sound, we are unable to hear the sound, Mehendi.
Now that the E-Summit has been officially declared open, let me guide you through a few rules to keep in mind while attending. Please ensure that you have a stable internet connection at all times. Please stay muted at all times. For answering or maybe asking any questions, you can always use the chat box option that we have. For Jai Hind College students, please enter the same name and email IDs in all the feedback forms for certification. Certification will be awarded only to the students who attend all sessions during the day.
I would now like to invite our principal, Dr. Ashok Wadia, to kindly give his opening remarks.
Thank you very much for inviting me. But I must say that, as you have put yourself founder and CEOs and secretaries there of our ESL, have you left anything for me to say? You already done everything. So now if I start talking the same thing, I think all the people who are there entrepreneurs would not like it, right? So I'm very glad that my students have developed that kind of confidence and able to manage this global summit even in the pandemic. I could see here that 500 students or 500 participants are already there on this Zoom meet, and apparently 1,000 more are also there, joining the other channel. So congratulations for all my students. As I always say, you are my strength, and you have really proved yourself again by achieving this. And I'm glad that you are handling it, because we have that much confidence, and that you will definitely will show. Today you are put it as founder and CEO, but I'm sure that in future I will meet CEO and shake hand with you. So here we are starting with this Global Entrepreneurship Summit, and I'm glad that we have here the first speaker, that is Mr. Vivek Saxena, and that is Thinky. I was just before earlier was speaking to my students. They had come to take my interview, and I was telling them during this pandemic what is missed and what will be the loss for our country is that thinkers, because the students were not actually there in front of the teachers. They were not interacting among themselves, and that will be a great loss. And entrepreneurship is something without thinking you cannot go ahead. And the topic which I selected, that you have to think, you have to come with ideas, and then you have to implement them. So I'm glad that we are having such kind of speakers lineup. Even the people who have written the books, and they are foreign authors. There are entrepreneurs which have made name in not only in their country, but globally. They are from USA and other countries. So I'm very happy to see that you have managed all this kind of show. Students, hats off to you. You have proved you again that you are giant right. And all the people who are actually joining this summit, I'm sure that you will be benefited. And we would like to hear from you more so that we will be able to organize more and more such events. Under Rocky Ma'am's guidance and the entire team of this entrepreneurship sale, I'm really congratulate you for organizing this. And without any ado, I consider that you start taking it forward. Introduce our speaker because everyone is waiting for him to hear him. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Maybe can we have the first slide? The Jai Hind College Global Entrepreneurship Summit 2022, presented by HDFC Bank, powered by Bright Outdoor Media, co-sponsored by Baggett, in association with Plum Body Loving, trading partner Havenspire, home decor partner Vipul Homes, news and media partner The Education Tree. In association with Digital India, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, National E-Governance Division, Make in India, Skill India, Maharashtra State Innovation Society, Startup India, Amazon Web Services Activate, Mumbai Angels Network, Inflection Point Ventures, Inactis, TIE Mumbai, and Wadhwani Foundation. We have with us our speaker, Mr. Vivek Saxena, for the first session of our summit. I would now like to invite our Assistant Professor of Management Studies, Professor Shilpa More, to kindly introduce our speaker for today. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Tisha. A very good morning and a warm welcome to one and all present over here. A lot of people, particularly the younger generation, and to be more specific, Generation Z, they want to live life on their own terms, doing things they are passionate about. They're more apt to drive change in the world by creating a solution for it rather than waiting for someone else to solve it. They want to be in charge of their time and get to cherry pick their projects. They don't want to be a part of the typical 9-to-5 day job industry. Instead of trying to fit into someone else's role of how they can best use their skills, they take their skills and create a money-making venture around that. The COVID-19 pandemic and its ensuing unemployment spike inspired a lot of people to think outside the box. While living in the confines of their homes, individuals discovered how to turn their hobbies and passions into profits. In fact, we all started finding creative ways to make a living from our most valued resources, that's phones, tablets, and laptops. You can make an income doing what you're passionate about, from cooking to teaching to reacting to movies or music videos to singing. We all know Justin Bieber was discovered by Usher on YouTube. The creator economy makes this possible. Just to highlight the recent data, the creator economy has received around $1.3 billion funding in 2022 alone, and is actually growing at a very fast rate. We can actually expect the creator economy to double itself from 50 million to 100 million creators in the coming years. So without wasting more time, now I would like to introduce our guest speaker for the first session to enlighten us about content creator economy, Mr. Vivek Saxena. Mr. Vivek Saxena is the founder and CEO of Digicita, a venture builder focusing on innovations in the area of new age social platforms and the marketplaces. With over 25 years of work experience in various senior roles across technology, internet, and consumer companies. He is best known for his industry first payment wallet innovation, Zipcash, now known as Ola Money, among his many other entrepreneurial ventures and current investments. He is also on the board of Anuvi Chemicals Limited, a leading specialty and construction chemicals manufacturer. He dreams of reimagining and reconstructing the digital experience for greater collaboration and productivity. And he imagined the future of payments well over a decade before it boomed in India. He successfully exited Zipcash in 2015. Prior to Zipcash, Vivek has spent 6 years in various senior management roles at Microsoft, such as Industry Manager Retail, where he was responsible for formulating Microsoft's entry strategy for the retail vertical in India, and the global accounts vertical, which consisted of some of the Microsoft's large blue chip customers such as Citibank, Siemens, Unilever, Accenture, amongst the others. Prior to Microsoft, Vivek has worked with Wipro and the leading advertising and media companies such as JWT and Mindshare. He has done his BSc in physics from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, further pursued MBA in finance and marketing from NMIMS and Wellinkers, respectively. Well, his academic journey doesn't end here. He's done his Masters of Arts in Philosophy and completed his MPhil in Buddhism from Mumbai University. He is an active participant of the startup ecosystem and is an angel investor, advisor to various startups. In his leisure times, he loves to read. He's an avid chess player and is fascinated by the world of astronomy. I take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Vivek in Jain family. Thank you so much, sir, for giving your precious time. Over to you, Mr. Vivek.
Thank you, Professor Shilpa, for the lovely introduction. Principal Dr. Ashok Wadia, faculty members and students. It's really my pleasure to be here, for the Global E-Summit organized by the E-Cell and the Skill Hub of, Jain College. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me over. So Professor Shilpa really talked about the whole creator economy and the way it's booming. And what I wanted to actually today really talk about is to really step back and try and, kind of talk to you through as to really the big changes that are happening, Have I been allowed the permission to share the slide? Yeah. Yeah. If you could just let me know whether my slide's visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So like Professor Shilpa really talked about, that how, the last, few years, we see this huge movement happening towards what we call as the creator economy, right? And people are like kind of pursuing the passion, the talent, they're using the laptops and tablets and all, right? But what I really want to do in this session is really try and step back and try and give you the overall, view as to what's happening and which direction are we going. Why is suddenly this whole thing about the creator economy is becoming such a big deal, right? And, so my talk really is trying to kind of trace through over the last 15 years, our whole evolution from what I call social media 1.0, which I actually call as a hustle economy, to social 2.0, which I call as a creative economy. I mean, and really, what are really the tailwinds and, the characters out here, right? So what I'll do, I'll probably try and cover that part in the next 15 odd minutes and maybe spend 5 minutes just trying to tell you as to what we're trying to do with Thinkly and, what exactly is our whole result of, of our existence around. So to kind of begin with, the web, as we all know, seems like, ubiquitous, right? It just seems to be like a part of a life, right, out there. But the fact of the matter is the web that, as we know, it is very, very, young and nascent. It's barely 25 years of age. Now, technically, it was discovered much earlier, but in mainstream application with people and industries and consumers using it, it probably started off, somewhere around 94, 95. I'm sure your faculty members will probably be more aware of it. I mean, as to, when there was a world before the net, and then there was a world, when the net kind of came in. And, the web that was there in 94, 95 was very different from the web that you think about right now. We never had mobiles and mobile datas and, believe it or not, no Wi-Fi's, hardly any laptops, right? We used to access the net through these very, very bulky, huge desktops. And we'd actually have wide connections, which would allow us to plug onto the net through a horrible modem cable line and, just access it, right?
So,
and internet at that...
Sorry to interrupt, but your video is frozen.
I'm on the first slide. Can you see the evolution of the web?
Yes, sir. Your video is frozen.
Okay, let me just see if I could. Is my screen okay now?
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe it's the Zoom which is acting up, so as long as you can hopefully see my slides, just let me know. Yeah.
In fact, we can request all the participants also to switch off their cameras.
Is my slide available? Is
Yes.
visible?
Yes.
Okay. maybe it's because the slides on, maybe that's the reason the videos kind of held up. But yeah, let's just moving along. So so we used to actually access the net through those, like I said, the multi desktops over those horrible connections, right? But at that point in time, the internet was very different. It was actually what we call it was actually in the read mode, because all you could do is actually get onto websites like Yahoo, portals, MSN, and you could only basically consume stuff from the net. Setting up websites was very expensive, and I mean, the whole internet was extremely limited in the way. There was very little interaction that was possible because of the technologies prevailing at that point in time, right? But something changed somewhere around 2004, 2005, right? Because suddenly the internet went into what we call as a read and a write mode. Because suddenly you could actually start interacting with the websites, you could start posting, and people started blogging. Sites like Yelp came up, and then of course, the big daddies, Facebook, Orkut, Twitter, Insta, all of them happened. Because suddenly you could not only consume content, but you could also start writing content. You could actually start sharing, eventually even sharing videos and pictures. But the whole way the internet actually was changed, And then, of course, with the advent of iPhone in somewhere 2006, and then Android, smartphones happened. The main way of consuming internet moved from those bulky desktops to laptops to eventually these edge devices like the mobile phones. And you were always on. The cloud computing happened. The whole revolution. And pretty much we are right now still in the midst of this whole Web 2.0, right? And I think it's still playing out. In fact, even if you look at it, even websites like Airbnb, Dropbox, Uber, they're all basically byproducts of Web 2.0, right? And like I said, we're still in the middle of it. And people have, over the last 2-3 years, have started talking about, okay, what next? And they start talking about Web 3.0. And really, it depends upon the time of the day, who you ask. Web 3.0 is probably going to be a function of all these new technologies. But they call it crypto, Bitcoin, NFTs, DAOs, DApps, and so on and so forth, right? Of course, there's a huge debate because, it's actually a very polarizing debate, because some people feel that what you call as cryptos and blockchains are nothing but byproducts or just the next step of evolution of Web 2.0. It's nothing, drastically major. It's just a move towards decentralization. And there's some people who believe that Web3 is fundamentally very different right now, right? And I think we can keep debating about till the cows come home, right? But my focus in today's talk is really about to focus on this very, very powerful byproduct of Web 2.0, which is really the social media companies, right? And which is really what I call a social 1.0 company. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, they've become a pervasive part of our life. And they've changed the way we consume things, the way we interact with each other, the way we kind of, do our entertainment, sometimes infotainment, right? And I think it's a very powerful force. So my talk is really going to be focused on this byproduct of Web 2.0, which I call it social 1.0 companies. And we really want to see is how have they been actually evolving, right? Unfortunately, no matter how powerful the idea is, today, if you were to tell somebody that social media, or for, we talk to a parent about it, right? The whole focus is very, very, negative around it, right? Because obviously, we all are very familiar with this whole thing around, when you talk about addiction, the anxiety around the social media. I mean, the studies about teenage girls really getting addicted to Insta, the negative effects of that. The whole thing about mindless scrolling that happens, you're always fighting the algorithm. I mean, get onto a YouTube in shorts video or a Insta Reels, and you're just mindlessly scrolling up there, right? Talk about the whole trolling that happens on Twitter, the toxicity that's there in this whole post, right? I mean, it's really not a place for a great debate. If you talk about, let's say, even like privacy issues, I mean, the Cambridge Analytica showed that how, all the data is really used, manipulated, sold, to the advertisers, and what, we somewhere have given consent to that. So they're not even actually doing anything illegal, right? But our data is really being sold. And these platforms are completely run over by ads, right? And then of course, there's this big issue around monetization, because end of the day, how do we really look at making money, as really as a consumer? So if you were to think of it, that this is the current status of the social media. It's a place where it's become shrill clickbaity content, toxicity, and it's really run over by ads, right? And, sometimes you really wonder that, how did we land up here, right? Because this is supposed to be a very interesting place. I mean, this could have been so powerful. Social media could have been so powerful, which could have really added value, right? And the reason for that, if you were to actually think about it, is really the whole, uneasy balance between the three stakeholders of a social media: the platform, the creators, and the users, right? And currently, if you look at it, everything is very, very skewed towards the platform. And just to kind of tell you out, that currently what I call is a hustle economy, why is it the way it is? Now, fundamentally, if you think of it, YouTube is YouTube because all of you. I mean, it's because of the millions and billions of videos that all of you have uploaded, right? Insta is because of Insta, because of all the content that you've all uploaded on that. And similarly with Twitter, right? But, we all know these platforms have become 70, 80, $1 trillion companies. But what about us? What is it that we earn? The only thing that we earn is really what we call is the currency of social influence. We earn likes, we earn retweets, we earn followers. That's it, right? The money is completely cornered by the social media platform. So the creators actually end up having no say in it, right? In fact, as late as 2012, I mean, none of the large social media platforms really enable people to make money on the platform, with the exception perhaps of YouTube, when they actually launched a channel affiliate program, and you could probably make some part of the money through advertising that you're out there. So what was really happening on the dollars, right? People, consumers, like, creators, they're spending their energies, they're addicted to the platform, they're making great videos. But what's really happening? They're making no money. So what do the influencers, social influencers that, Professor Shilpa talked about, right? What do? They are on a constant hustle of trying to build a large following, right? Really build up a huge following of people. And, then basically, unfortunately, hustle them products to product placements, to product endorsements, give them a payment link, ask people to click so that they can make some money, right? So what is really happening out there is that, because the platform is not enabling you to make money, you're doing all this kind of a side hustle around the platform to try and make money, right? And then, some of you might actually say that, listen, how does it really matter, right? I mean, end of the day, the platforms are making money, the creators are not making. I mean, I'm just a consumer, how do I care, But we all know there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? Because ultimately, all of us paid with our data. Every time you went onto Facebook and update your relationship status, or you share your interests, or you share your video, there's an algorithm which is figuring out you, profiling you, and then trying to run ads on that, right? So the end of the day, and you really can't actually blame them, because at the end of the day, social media platform had to make money somehow. And they figure out the best way to make money is through ads. And the only way to make money is therefore to kind of take a profile, tell a, let's say, a FMCG company or a brand or whatever, say, this is the person, he's probably interested in your product, and make the money. And they've done a fantastic job out of it, right? I mean, Facebook, for example, made around $40 billion worth of ads, they earned, that's the kind of revenue they did. Google, Facebook, all of them. I mean, that's really the primary way that they're making money, right? And, and then again, when you think about it, I mean, the whole negativity around the social media platform, the whole sensationalism, the fake news, end of the day, how do we really expect them to kind of hold it? Because all of this, wokeism, cancel culture, shaming, bullying, it only drives more and more engagement on the platform, which means you keep coming back for more, which means they have more and more inventory to run ads on, and therefore they can make more money. So you can, they're hardly incentivized to kind of rein in, when we expect them to rein in all this negativity, the sensationalism, fake news, because they're just incentivized in that direction, right? And that's really what we have. We really have a platform nowadays which in some ways has obviously democratized social influence, but the content is very shrill, clickbaity, like I said, and it's become what I call is a hustle culture. Think of social media today, and everything about it is nothing but hustling, in that sense. But, it didn't have to be like this. Because way back in 2008, right, that's around the time when Facebook was actually launched, there was this very bright editor of Wired magazine, the prestigious Wired magazine, called Kevin Kelly. And he said that, look, the power of the internet now that you have is that you can actually connect with people anywhere in the globe. I mean, we could be sitting in Mumbai and having, obviously, we talk to our friends in US, UK, Australia, Canada, where have you. And in the same way, each one of us who wants to be a creator can actually find 1,000 true fans from anywhere in the globe. So he was basically trying to say that, listen, you don't need millions of dollars or millions of followers or customers, or fans to make a living as a craftsperson, photographer, musician. Basically, to make a living as a creator, all you needed were only 1,000 true fans. Now, what do we mean by a true fan? In the definition of Kevin Kelly, what he was really talking about is these are the fans who really are obsessed about what you do, who just love your work so much that they're willing to pay you $1, $2, $5, $10 because they really admire you. I mean, you could be a YouTube dancer, you could be somebody who probably who's a tattoo artist for all you care, somebody who's a blogger, somebody who writes his poems, right? End of the day, if you're talented, it's very easy for you to try using the power of the net to find 1,000 true friends somewhere across the globe who are willing to pay you that money because they love what you do, right? And that was really the promise of really the internet, which somehow we took a very divergent path. Instead of going down the path of 1,000 true fans, we started chasing the million fans. And we tried to start chasing them in terms of money, because you really obviously couldn't do it. And you know what? That started changing, because I think over the last 5-7 years, there's a big movement from social 1 to social 2, And these are companies, which are really about the creators first. These are the companies which are obsessed about giving creators a control and really about having their interests front and center. And they're actually built on 3 pillars, of which I'll talk about later: subscription, data privacy, and unbundling, right? So what we're seeing is that the companies like Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Insta, which are all, very dominant, are slowly yielding way to the next generation of social 2.0 companies, which is really where the Patreon, Substack, Clubhouse, Buy Me a Coffee, even Thinkly kind of come in, right? So we'll try and examine really what's happening out there, and would love your thoughts later on, in the Q&A section about this. So if you were to look at it, I mean, the social 2.0, I mean, I would just like to kind of look at 2 or 3 anecdotes as to how social 2.0 started coming about, right? Because honestly, this should have happened 15 years back. It didn't. But then because of the outcome of the problem of the social 1.0 company, the social 2.0 started evolving. And but first we have example is really Gumroad. Gumroad is a very interesting company. Maybe you're familiar with it. What it allows is that, let's say if you've got some social capital, like I talked about, let's say you have 10,000 people following you on Twitter. They love, what you talk about and all. Now, how do you make money, right? So what you can do with something like Gumroad is that you can, let's say, for example, let's say you have, 10 ways to, be, let's say, a better speaker, or to how to make friends, or whatever it is. Maybe you probably have your own PDF, or maybe you have your own, let's say, song or something, or a recording that you have, right? So you can actually upload a digital, good on Gumroad, and then share the link on a Twitter profile. And tell people that, listen, you know what, if you would like to, let's say, know how to build up a following of 10,000 Twitter followers, or how to make friends, or whatever it is, click on this link and make a payment. So the first evolution of social 2.0 started happening with Gumroad, where people started like kind of using it to monetize social capital that they build on Insta and Twitter and the like. But the problem with Gumroad is still, again, you're on a little bit of a hustle, because you might try and sell, let's say, 100 let's say PDFs this month, and next month you'll again try to do let's say some kind of a sale, and say, listen, I've got last 50 PDF copies, and you've got to keep doing this every year, every month throughout the year, to kind of make an honest living on that. But I think the big change in this whole thing about social 2.0 happened somewhere around 2015 with the evolution of Patreon. Again, some of you might be aware, but it's really a fascinating story. One of the co-founders of Patreon is a musician called Jack Conte, right? And the story goes that Jack Conte apparently spent 50, 60 days at a stretch, trying to work on his next music video. And he was completely drained out at the end of it all, right? I mean, he obviously, put in a lot of hard work, a lot of blood, sweat, and a lot of money. He, in fact, maxed out his credit cards, and he was, so to say, bankrupt, right? And the night before, when he was about to upload his musical video, he was thinking that, okay, here you go. All this effort, all this money, everything I put in, and now the great YouTube algorithm is going to decide whether I'm going to eventually get 1 billion views or I don't get 1 billion views, right? At the end of the day, we all know the algorithm has to like you somewhere, right? And so he was just saying, okay, here you go. He was just filled with anxiety. He said, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. And if I'm going to be really lucky, I'll probably get 1 million views on YouTube. And if I get 1 million views, I'm going to get $180 from YouTube as the money. I mean, that's the money that YouTube typically pays you for getting 1 million views, right? And he's like, all of this for $180. He said, you know what? If I'd been smart enough, I could have actually gone around and maybe requested 18 of my friends to just give me $10 each, right? And maybe they might even be willing to pay me $10 each every month to kind of support my art form, right? And that changed everything. I mean, that's when he had an epiphany, and then suddenly he launched Patreon, which allowed people to actually just tell them that, listen, if you like my work, if you like what I'm doing on YouTube, if you like what I'm doing, let's say on Insta, please support me. I'm an artist, I'm a sculptor. Just come to patreon.me/Vivek Rohini, or whatever it is, just come and make the payment, and just pay me, let's say, what do we want? $1, $5, $10 a month, right? That whole idea exploded. I mean, the idea as simple as this just exploded, because suddenly people were, in a way, trying to become members to support their artists, to support their favorite creators, so they would actually go to, let's say, Jack's sites or John's site and just start making the money. Patreon has exploded. I think over the last few years, they've probably got 250,000 creators on the platform. It's no surprise that today it's worth at around $4 billion, and they've raised some insane $200 million of funding, right? So that changed the game, because suddenly, from having to, kind of hustle products like you do in Gumroad, you could actually go and offer subscriptions, monthly subscriptions, which is really the most important thing, right? And the third company that's really my favorite is Substack, and more so because, remember in the first slide I talked about Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. Now, Substack is something you could argue is really built on Web 1.0 technologies, right? What does it do? It really enables people that, let's say, for example, somebody wants to start a newsletter. Let's say, let's say somebody wants to talk about, let's say I want to start a newsletter on branding or how to do a startup, right? So I can just go around to Substack, create a newsletter, and just start mailing it out to my friends and family. Eventually, the whole Substack kind of subscription kind of grows, because people obviously, they discover a good letter, they forward to each other, the whole circle grows. And when you reach around 1,000, let's say, subscribers, Substack will actually, kind of nudge you to say that, look, do you want to go premium? You're obviously putting a lot of effort and all to kind of come up with this. Why don't you just go premium, right? And they enable basically a payment button at the bottom where you can, let's say, charge, let's say, $1, $10, whatever you'd like, and then, start getting paid for it. And slowly, people start building up a readership. So even if let's say around 20% of the people from the original 1,000 stay on, you're still talking about $2,000, $3,000. That's a lot of money anywhere in the world to be a good side income, right? In fact, Substack's become so popular that some people are now earning close to $500,000 a year just writing a blog once a week, 4 times a month. So you've got people who have quit New York Times, Wired magazine, people who become full-time Substack writers, right? So if you look at it, for example, if you look at Benedict Evans, right? Let's say even if he's got 5,000 people, he writes some great stuff on technology. Imagine if he's got 5,000 people paying him $10 every month. You're talking about $50,000. You're talking about close to 35 lakhs a month, right? And you multiply it over 10, you're looking around 3.5, 4 crores. And that's really insane the kind of money people are making on this. Now look at this. Here was people making, maybe anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 a month versus making no money on Facebook, on Twitter, on Insta, right? And that's the fundamental difference that's really shifting, right? So if you really want to look at the key characteristics of Social 2.0, the first and the main thing, which sounds very small, is that it has to be built around subscription. Because the moment you are having a subscription-led revenue, like the way Patreon offers you, like the way Substack allows you, Twitch, and the multiple platforms which allow you to do that, right? It helps you build a recurring revenue, If you're really serious about becoming a creator, you cannot live your life with the whole anxiety saying that I don't know whether my next video is going to be a 10 million view or it's just going to flop, right? What you have to do is you have to focus on building a sound business like the way, and businesses love recurring revenue. If you look at the reason why a company like Microsoft, Oracle, IBM, so on and so forth, SAP are big is because they always build this licensing recurring revenue, which comes in month after month after month, right? And that's the way to do it. The second thing it does for the creators is it gives them a lot of creative independence, because surprisingly, when you're actually trying to build a product, or let's say trying to build your writing or your art form for 1,000 people who appreciate you versus 1 million people, you actually get so much more creative independence, because you really don't care what the remaining, whatever, let's say 999,000 people think about it. You just care about those 1,000 people who really love your art form, who really love what you do, and you want to do that, right? So that it really gives people, it frees them up. And that's the reason people love the Social 2.0 companies, right? And the third thing is, of course, you have full control on the pricing, on the ownership, because you're not really looking at, an algorithm deciding how much you make money. You're not really at the mercy of a YouTube deciding that, okay, you know what, you got so many views and let's say we made so much money and you're going to get 16% of that. And you can decide whether I want to charge $10, $1, 50 rupees, 20 rupees, it's up to you, right? The next thing really is the data privacy, because more and more of the Social 2.0 companies are trying to make money as a percentage of what you earn. They're not really looking at running ads on the platform. So obviously what really happens is that they're not really interested in collecting your data and selling it to the highest bidder. So automatically, most of the Social 2.0 companies, if you see, are much better off in handling data and privacy, because that's just the way they're not incentivized to make money, right? And the third thing that if you think about it really, and I think, if not many people have really realized this, but what's really happening with Social 2.0, there's this great unbundling happening. Now, what do I mean by that? If you were to look at 10 years back, if you were to, let's say, trying to make a video, where would you go? You'd go to YouTube. If you, let's say, wanted to go to a friends and family network, you'd go to Facebook. If it's all about photograph, it's probably Insta. As brand celebrity, it's probably Twitter, right? So that's how you kind of went. There were 4 or 5 large aggregators, right? But today YouTube continues to be big. But you know what? Which is the number one platform on video streaming about gaming? It's not YouTube. It's Twitch. So what Twitch says is exactly like YouTube, but it just focus on streaming, video games and stuff like that. Like, for example, many years back, I used to play Age of Empires, right? I mean, I was a big avid fan of that. And now I discovered Twitch, and I actually go and watch Hera take on Viper at Twitch. And I'm sure a lot of you probably consume your own Fortnite or, Legends or whatever it is, right, out there. So, and, so like I said, there was YouTube and there was only YouTube. And now you have Twitch. And Twitch got bought out by $1 billion by Amazon, right? And it's probably worth $15 billion now. So for gaming, it's Twitch. You know what? If you really want to do video streaming for education, it's Udemy, or in India, June Academy. And if you want to do actually, streaming, live in-person streaming for education, it's Maven. So there you go. The whole video streaming has actually got debundled. It's got unbundled to YouTube, then Twitch for gaming, Udemy for, let's say, EdTech, and Maven for EdTech Live, right? And so on and so forth. The same thing's happening, let's say, with blogging, right? I mean, you could go and do maybe short posts on Twitter or on Facebook, but you know what? If you really want to write a newsletter, you probably get onto something like, let's say, Substack. And if you let's say want to do something which is thought-provoking, you would probably come to a platform like Thinkly. So, the whole opportunities are happening. And the reason this is happening is because, suddenly you're not trying to go to the platform which has 1 billion people, because you honestly don't care about those 1 billion people. You care about those 1,000 people who are going to basically subscribe to you. And therefore, the creators have that much more option that they can really choose the right platform for them, which allows them the creators and gets them connected to their fans that they're looking at. They're all chasing the 1,002 fans, right? So you are slowly shifting. If you think about it, you're really focused on creating value. You're not really focused on hustling and living in anxiety and try to just make the next big video. You're really focused on creating value for yourself and your 1,000, 2,000 true fans who really love what you do, right? So just to kind of summarize, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the way I look at the difference that's playing out, on social 1 and 2 is from being a platform first focus, it's becoming creator first, right? You're not chasing 1,000,000 fans, you're chasing 1,000 true fans, which actually adds value to your creative, input that you're looking at, right? If you're not chasing a dopamine-led or an ad-led model, you're not chasing an algorithm, you're actually trying to build a sound, robust business based on subscription, right? Privacy is obviously improved because the platforms are no longer incentivized, and the whole incentive to kind of do sensational fake news just kind of disappears, right? You'll see zero, what should I say, sensationalism and fake news happening, let's say, on a platform like Substack and maybe maybe even something like Udemy and all that, because there's just really no interest for you to do that, right? So the aggregation leading to great unbundling, and like I said, from still clickbait content and the hustle economy, you're moving finally to the creator economy, right? So I think this, if you were to think about, is what's really happening, and this is what's going to be going on all cylinders for the next few years, And I'm not saying that Facebook and Pinterest and all will disappear, right? These are all very powerful platforms. They'll continue to stay, but what you'll see is more and more such platforms getting unbundled and coming out and really providing you a simple focus area, right? So that's really my bit about why we're moving from a hustle to a creative economy. Just a few slides on Thinkly. So Thinkly very clearly is, again, like I said, a social 2.0 platform. And just to share with you, like, our thoughts, in fact, right at the introduction, the two speakers were very nicely talking about that. How as an entrepreneur, you half the time don't know what you're doing. You're just kind of, going with the gut instinct or whatever, right? I'm just sharing with you some of our thoughts, right? Because at the end of the day, you're obviously hoping that things kind of fall in place. But our whole reason there for Thinkly was the fact that if you were to kind of plot the current platforms on the X and the Y axis, right? So on the X axis, if you think of it, you have stuff which is all about it's all about the kind of content that you're writing. Like, is it more musing led, or is it more thought through, or is it more spontaneous, right? So you have the X axis that talks about that, and then you obviously have the Y axis, which is more about the kind of network are you in. Like, are you really in a platform which is unidirectional or bidirectional, right? So if you were to think about it, a Facebook is a bidirectional network, right? Because I need to follow somebody to be able to be the friends, right? I mean, he needs to follow me back, right? In that sense. But Twitter and Insta is a unidirectional, right? I mean, I could follow somebody on Twitter, and that's great. I mean, that's good enough, right? And I could still consume. If you look at it, I mean, LinkedIn comes very close to what we're trying to do, because LinkedIn is, of course, a unidirectional. I mean, I could possibly follow people's posts out there. I of course cannot be the friends, but it's also very focused on really on a corporate profile, right? I mean, it's all about your work. It's all about what you do. It's all about your professional life, right? Thinkly, on the other hand, is actually all about everything else, right? I mean, you can come and write on Thinkly about whether it's philosophy, whether it's literature, whether it's business, startups, entrepreneurship, what have you, right? So when you go to Thinkly, you really get a very, very eclectic view of things. You can go and share whatever you'd like in whatever form you want, on multiple topics, right? So it's very, very, it's really more a thought through perspective-led platform, right? Our vision, is really about how do we make Thinkly a safe place, because I think there's so much of trolling that's there right now on the platform. There's so much of negativity. We've actually focused on building some, simple troll-free features, some algorithms, which just kind of makes it extremely safe for you to come and share, right? So that you're not really worried about people nagging you, trolling you or shaming you on the platform, right? So one, that secondly, we really want to be a place for great content. We really want to be the Netflix for some great content, so much so that, your moms, for example, instead of telling you, hey, get off Insta, don't spend time, it's stupidity, right? They probably have you say that, get out of Thinkly, spend 20 minutes a day on Thinkly, right? I mean, that for us is really our really a North Star that we're trying to chase out here, right? And it really is a place where we honestly believe where the world comes to think. So to kind of roll out our whole vision for Thinkly, what we've done is focus on 4 main cohorts. So the first cohort is independent creators. Anybody who wants to come and share a perspective on those 55-60 categories can come. We've been very fortunate to have some really great provoking thinkers on the platform. We have the writings of, Dr. Ajit Ranade, Kaveri Bamzai. I'll just talk about them in a minute. And then we've actually aggregated content from some of the largest global publications in the world, because they themselves have so much of content on different interest areas. We've been able to do deals with them, and we're getting some of the very exciting stuff. I'll just share with that. And then, of course, we're also aggregating some of these really popular newsletters like Morning Brew, Hustle, Verb. We're trying to make Thinkly as an aggregator for some great content that you could read. And finally, we have some stuff which we call it the Thinkly Original and Curated, where we actually, conduct our own content. For example, when in the month of December, 83 was launched, everybody was rushing to kind of get a perspective of the Indian team, Kapil Dev, Sunil Gavaskar, right? We went across and, had an interview with Michael Holding. We had Deep Dasko, the BBC correspondent, interview him, and we kind of, made that available on platform, So our focus always is about how do we get something which is very, very interesting and different, right? So just to move along, like I said, the platform allows you to, when you come out to Thinkly, you can create a channel, which we call as a publication, and you can share in the form of a blog, you can share a podcast, you can share a video. We will be launching live streaming maybe in 2 months' time, and all of this is built around subscription. So so you can actually make all of this available. So let's say I have a publication called Cosmos where I write about astronomy. I share videos, just to kind of engage with people. But tomorrow, if I really believe that I'm putting in 5-10 hours a week, I should monetize it. I could eventually tomorrow make it as a paid channel and just charge 10 rupees, 20 rupees, through micropayments that we have on the platform, right? So when I talked about the independent writers, these are the people that we have. A few names like Dr. Ajit Ranade, the Chief Economist Officer at ABG Group. We have Gaurav Kalla, the very renowned sports journalist. We have Amin Gadiali. You might probably know him as a person behind the highly witty and popular Mumbai Traffic Police Twitter account, right? So he's a person out there. Similarly, we have Kaveri Bamzai, the renowned film critic. I mean, she actually writes on binge television watching. Check out her profile on thinkly.me/Kaveri Speaks, where every weekend, like today, she'll probably try and pick up some of the web series which are launching over the weekend to kind of give you a review, right? Anubhav Sapra, the very popular, food blogger, and Amit Chagani, who actually runs a portal called, Motroids, right? So you'll get, like I said, it's a very diverse eclectic. But I think some of the things that we're really proud is about the partnership we've done with the leading media houses. So we actually now have writings from 50 Nobel laureates and 120 heads of state on a platform. Just 2 weeks back, we had a writing from Joseph Stiglitz, the renowned economist, Nobel laureate. We had Shashi Tharoor on the platform a couple of times, right? And, so virtually every day, you have writings from one of these. Sometimes have somebody from UN, from Security Council or whatever. We've been able to get the rights out here. And finally, we've been able to build a very strong feed on these 5 verticals of business, science, health, culture, and geopolitics, right? So these are the, publishing we tied up. So you can actually get articles from curated best articles from MIT, Harvard, Mayo, New Scientist, Variety. And now, especially with this unfortunate thing that's playing out, in Ukraine, the geopolitics is very rich, with the diplomat defense and some excellent insightful articles out there, right? So yeah, this is me. I mean, this is what we try to do. This is what Naveen, Deepak, and I are really focused on. We really want to change the way people hopefully consume, social media platforms, and really make it a place where you could come and actually add value to your life, and not just be a place for entertainment and escapism, right? So that's all for me from my side, and over back to you.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm sure everyone had great insights to take back from your session. So we will open the floor for questions now. Anyone with questions, you all can put it in the chat box. Everyone attending on YouTube. So we have 180 attendees on YouTube live as well. Anyone with questions, please put them in the chat box. We will be taking questions one by one.
Mr. Vivek, before others write, I just quickly will take up this opportunity. Am I audible?
Yeah, Doctor.
Yeah, so this is, it's interesting to tell, people are talking about social media and they just say we have so many followers, and especially with the current students, and also they look at it, okay, this person has so many followers, so he's like, you can actually look at it. But of course, you've brought in very important perspective, because at the end of the day, if you talk about startups, it's business, it's money.
That's right.
Now, what is that key? Because when we look at any startup and as a part of our ecosystem, when we say the first thing people do is ensure that they launch it on any of the social media platform. And then they
That's right.
talk about getting people liking and all that, those kind of things. So any specific insight you would like to give, which is the first step for any startup, what they should do so that they get into right direction?
Dr. Aki, you brought up a very important point. I think, if you think of a startup, typically goes through 2 or 3 phases, right? I mean, one is the whole ideation stage when you're really looking at, thinking about the idea and, you're kind of probably scribbling on the napkin and you're excited that it's the next billion-dollar company that you've thought about, right? And the next focus is about building the prototype, right? But I think the biggest challenge that you have in any startup, by far the biggest challenge is about trying to find the product market fit. Because I think end of the day, what really happens that you think of a product, you probably imagine the world in a certain way and you build a product for that, right? I mean, a lot of companies raise lots of funding. Some really smart people make a lot of funding. But when you finally launch the product, the biggest problem that you have is that you realize that, the market is not what it was really, it's not lapping it up the way you wanted, or the target audience that you thought, is very different. So I would say more than anything else, I think the biggest thing you have to focus on after you launch a startup is to focus on the product market fit. So really try and do number of iteration. And I can tell you every company has gone through, I mean, we keep talking about Apple as being this, amazing, thing, but I mean, they've actually struggled for building product which eventually have the product market fit, right? Because you have to obviously look at the problem that the consumers are facing and then try and build up with the product. If that doesn't work, change the product, relaunch it, right? So I think more than really marketing and everything, is really about going and talking to the consumers, seeing how are they liking it. Interestingly, half the time what happens that you build, let's say I build it, let's say for person A, but I realize actually person B is using the product more. And then you need to then figure out that, what problem are you really solving of that, and then double down on that, right? So this actually, Dr. Aki, itself is a very big topic, product market fit, and, we can probably take this up sometime.
I understand. No, but another, this is an important perspective, sir, I wanted to bring here, because a lot of generally at the younger age, students just follow with the numbers. Even for LinkedIn also, they look at it that this person has so many followers. But what you rightly said is 1,000 true fans. Yeah, specific numbers. So that is something which is extremely important. So that was, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
So Johan Dubey has asked a question: how to increase our engagement rate with the content we are trying to provide to the people?
Sorry, how do we improve our engagement rate?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, I'm sorry, there's no real simple formula for that, right? I mean, if you look at it, I mean, I actually follow a lot of people on Substack, and what I've actually realized with them is that, when you read the writing of some of these most successful writers, right, they always say that first and foremost is about consistency. So it's not about the fact that you suddenly go on a, let's say, what should I say, like a creating spree, right? It's about ensuring that, let's say, if you're, blogging, ensure you're writing with a very, very clear focus, like, maybe blogging twice a week, just kind of build a, kind of rhythm around that. Second thing is very important is to be very clear what is the area you're trying to occupy, because none of us can be an expert in multiple areas. So you have to really try and figure out which is that single niche. And see, that's the whole switch towards 1,000 true fans, right? Because if you're trying to appeal to everybody, you'll be all over the place. You'll be scattered all over. If you're trying to do fashion, you'll try to appeal to everybody and say, oh my God, I need to get this so many likes and, views, right? But when you say, listen, I'm actually really focused on writing this kind of blog, which is focused, let's say, on this subject, or I want to really focus on this kind of fashion, you then start creating your whole, what should I say, expertise in that area. All of us, fundamentally, if you look at it, have something which is very unique to us. So like I said, focus on a very, very narrow niche to begin with. And secondly, be consistent. And I think that's really the formula, honestly, that most of the guys will tell you that's the work for them, right? Because they'll say that we saw that I had subscribers, I was adding 5, 10, 20 a day, and suddenly, boom, something happened, and it got picked up, and then something else happened, right? So it's hard work, right? I mean, for all the glamour behind social influencing and all that, there's a lot of hard work that goes behind it, right? Yeah.
So there's another question in the chat box. Dia is asking, how can we ensure relevance and consistency if we want to follow this path over a long period of time?
Well, I think relevance only means that, when you're writing something, it just means that you need to really be consuming a lot of it first, right? I mean, if you, let's say, if I want to, let's say, tomorrow start writing about business, I mean, I need to really be on top of what's really happening out there, right? I mean, all of us are very familiar with Ankur Warikoo, right? I mean, he's an amazing creator. And if you were to actually think about him himself, he's somebody who's run a company, who's invested in companies, who's actually a lot of setbacks, right? But he just kind of, like I said again, he's actually built a lot of depth of knowledge in this one area about how do I launch a startup, right? In that sense, and I think that's what he's really focused on. So I think that's probably the only easy way to, you have to really focus on building your a depth of knowledge before you can actually really stay relevant, because things are changing all the time. Like what we learned, let's say in marketing 20 years back in our MBA schools are hardly any relevant right now, right? We have to stay on top of it, right? I mean, like for example, I never heard the word product market fit in any of our MBA classes, right? And now it's all over the place. I mean, the biggest question is, you want the next round of funding, show me your PMF, right? In that sense, right? No straight answers, I'm sorry, but I'm just saying, I'm just trying to share my perspective on this. I hope it's helpful.
So I myself had a question. So
Sure.
The primitive ways of marketing, which I'm sure the generation above us has not seen the content creation economy. So for them to accept this blogging and making videos and promoting a person and a product on Instagram, for example, or LinkedIn, how far do you think the attitudes have been converted to actually accept this change or this new trend that has come up?
No, I think that's a great point. I think with every generation, we suddenly see new and new, jobs being created, new forms of jobs being created. I mean, if you were to look at it, 40 years back, I mean, it was, 50 years back, you had to probably get a government job. And later on, you had to get into a PSU. Then you had to get into manufacturing. I mean, that's where, you had to be an engineer and stuff like that. In my time, for example, when I wanted to go into advertising, it was really, there was obviously nobody in advertising from my family. My father's been, from IIT Kharagpur. He was in manufacturing. He had set up his own business later on, and so on and so forth, right? So I think the type of jobs keep changing all the time, right? And similarly, if you look at it right now, suddenly you have jobs which are around RJs. I mean, nobody would have thought 20 years back that RJ could be a job. Playing for a club cricket, which is IPL, is new. So I think the same way, we'll see an evolution where all these things that we call as new age things like blogging and all, people will start taking seriously, right? But I think the focus is that if you really want to be taken seriously, if you want your family to take you serious, especially because the parents would get very worried, right? Ashna, if you tell them tomorrow that, look, I'm going to drop out from Jai Hind, or after Jai Hind, I'm just going to be a full-time blogger, right? I mean, they'll obviously be really concerned, right? So you have to really respond by showing seriousness about how you build the business. Think of it like a business. Don't think of it like a passion. And I think that's a lot of people say that, look, it's great to say that, follow your passion, follow your passion. I always say follow your talent, because talent will eventually get you. So if you, let's say, if you're a great blogger, you really think you can make an earning out of it, sure. Today the internet is really proliferating with people like you who are earning a big amounts of money, right? But if you realize that, look, that's not your focus, then you should probably obviously switch to something which you can, right? My other suggestion really is that I'm not sure whether it's great for people to jump into being a creative full-time right away. Of course, there have been some success stories, and these are very few and far in between, right? I think it's more important to ensure that you have a great education degree in place, a sound degree in place. Try and get an exposure either working for a startup or working for an MNC, and always have this as a side hustle. It's so much simpler to do that, right? Because you don't have to kind of go all in. When I, for example, quit Microsoft to start Zipcash, it was an all in, right? You kind of decide to go in. But now the advantage is, as creators, you can really take some time on a Saturday, Sunday, kind of shoot your videos, do your writing, kind of make it available over a drip over the week, right? So, I mean, you can really do that. So I think it's like I said, it really comes down to, are you really able to monetize it? And that's when you should be thinking about making it in like your primary business.
All right, so there's one more question on YouTube Live. What is driving the content creator economy, and how sustainable do you think it will be?
Well, like I said, I think the whole uneasy balance between the really the platforms, the creators and the users is what is shifting. I think the reason why you are seeing this proliferation, and I think Professor Shilpa had talked about, right, the billions of dollars of funding that's going in, it's really because the opportunity size is huge. Creators are tired of actually being on platforms and working for the platform like Facebook and Twitter, and which is why you're seeing this whole thing happening, because creators really want to get paid, they really want to get recognized, they really want to get incentivized, right? So I think that is fundamentally changing it, because they don't want to do it for free anymore. So I think that shift that's happening in the mindset that, look, we can't just have the platform become $1 billion company or a $50 billion company, right? I need to make a thing, and it's a very important. And I think it's here to stay. I mean, this is not a fad. I don't think so. Like creator economy is, in fact, if at all, you'll see it getting more and more structured. You're going to see more and more. In fact, in one of the interviews, I was asked, like, what's really going to happen next? And I genuinely believe, like the way you see the D2C brands, you'll see some creators just going and forming companies. I mean, again, look at the example of Ankur Warikoo, one-man show, and now he's got an entire team of producers and content writers and all supporting him, right? So it started. So he's virtually running a content business now, So we always have this image of a successful creator as somebody who just goes and hacks and dances his way on Insta. But behind that, there's a whole lot of thought that's going into it. Right? So I think it's only going to get more and more organized. And I'm hoping platforms like ours will help the content creator find the niche that they're looking for.
All right. So do we have time for one last question?
Sure. Go ahead.
Tisha Bukaria is asking, aren't we living in a bubble of trends, and won't the bubble of social media burst after a point of saturation?
Facebook has hit $1 trillion. I don't know at what point would you call it a bubble, right? Because it got listed at 25 billion, went on to be 50 billion, 100 billion. End of the day, all of these platforms, they need to create value, right? And I think as long as they're creating value, there is some, they will exist, right? If you look at Facebook, it's doing serious business, right? It generated $40 billion worth of ad revenue. I think more than 60 or 70% of all the ads in the world go to either Facebook or go to Google. Now that, I mean, that's not that's like I said, a very serious business to be in, right? In that sense, right? So, I don't think so that's going to change. Secondly, I don't think so we as consumers are going to change, right? I mean, end of the day, imagine your life without any of your social handles, right? Imagine, not being able to communicate with each other on WhatsApp, or being able to talk to each other on let's say, I believe a lot of you like doing texting on Insta chats more than anything else, right? I mean, so these are all our behaviors, right? The human has this need to kind of stay connected, right? What will change is I genuinely believe is the form of social media will change. So like I said, the whole unbundling that I talked about, right? I think you'll see a lot of that happening. For example, there are people who have groups which are just running on a paid Slack channel. A Slack channel where you're just having chatting or discussing, and they have paid groups on that, right? So you'll probably see social media in the forms that you may not recognize as a traditional social media, but it will continue to exist. Substack, for example, is a one-way email that comes into you, right? You read the newsletter. If you want, you reply to him, but you don't see this whole buzzing comments and, views and points of view happening, but it is still a social media channel, right? So I think what will happen is our fundamental needs will remain the same of staying connected with people, with being part of a tribe, being part of a community. It's going to be there. A need for entertainment is going to be there. And I think some social media platform or the other will obviously kind of step in to take that place, right?
All right. So the chat box is flooded with more questions. So if you don't mind, can we take one last question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Ashna, if you don't just take this, Arindam has posted 2 questions back to back. One, so if you can just pick up one, Arindam, his question. Yeah.
Arindam is asking how companies are transforming the self-monetization boom.
So how the companies are transforming the?
How are companies transforming the self-monetization boom?
Right. So I'm assuming your question is that how are the social 2.0 companies helping you monetize, right? Is that the right way to look at it? Yeah. So like I said, if you look at it, I think all of them have realized that they, at the end of the day, need to kind of put the creator, in the driving seat, and they need to be able to help them drive memberships or subscription on the platform. So if you look at all the successful 2.0 companies, whether you look at Twitch, whether you look at like Substack or Patreon, they've all introduced subscription platforms. So much so that now you've seen the 1.0 giants transforming themselves. So Twitter, for example, has come up with the tipping jar. It's come up with a platform called Review, which is a newsletter platform to kind of compete with Substack, right? You've got Facebook, which has launched Bulletin. So what you're seeing is that even the giants, this monolith giants who you thought probably would just not give a damn, all of them are actually switching their business model and launching subscription, membership, badges, paid tweets and stuff like that, right? So I think that's really the whole direction that it's going into. I would just say it's right now for the next few years, it's all about subscription. So Ashna, if you want to tomorrow become a creator, again try and find out a platform which helps you drive a subscription business. The power of subscription, the power of compounding is huge. So really focus on that.
All right, so I think this has got us to the end of the session. I'd like to hand over the session to Nishant to give you the formal vote of thanks.
A warm and graceful morning to everyone. It has been such an honor to be a part of this wonderful session. On behalf of the Jain College ESL Committee, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our speaker, Mr. Vivek Saxena, co-founder and CEO of Thinkly. Thank you, sir. The session was well demonstrated, and I'm sure all of us present here got clarity on what content creator economy is. Finally, I would like to thank all of you present here for making the time to be with us today and helping us make this session interactive. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. I really enjoyed the session, and maybe next time will probably be an in-person one.
Just to add on, Mr. Vivek, I actually made a lot of notes because the way you have actually explained the entire perspective of different fragmentation which is happening, and maybe where we talk about masses to specific areas was really commendable. And
thank you.
It's like, so for everybody to think of where we are landing in terms of true value when we talk about business and money. It should be ROI also, because generally it is just a fad which is happening. But then yes, so that is, thank you very much, and really appreciate. And of course, in a normal scenario, we would like to host you and have you in Jai Hind College. And on behalf of Jai Hind College, we really appreciate and thank you for all your valuable inputs and insight. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure, and the questions really kept me on my toes. So enjoyed that really a bit. And yeah, like I said, would love to probably have an in-person engagement sometime. Right?
Definitely.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
To all the attendees, a feedback form has been floated in the chat box. Everyone attending on YouTube, the feedback form has been put in the comments below. Please fill in the feedback form before you leave the session, because the form will be closed in 5 minutes. So please fill in the form before you leave the meeting. Thank you.